Welcome, Tony. We thought it was time, in terms of our roles on the Devonport Takapuna local board, to have a little chat about the emergency budget that Auckland Council are currently consulting on. Auckland Council's revenue and streams are obviously down substantially as a result of COVID-19, and the whole is in excess of $500 million, which is a lot of money. So there's been a budget put together. It's called the emergency budget, and it's been sent out for consultation with Auckland ratepayers. I think that lasts for the next 2 weeks. So we're keen to just talk that through so people understand it a little bit more. So welcome, Tony.
Thank you.
I know you've just done a lovely little article on the budget. So what are the key things that you think that ratepayers need to consider?
Well, I think firstly, people need to understand why there's such a deficit, and that there's a misunderstanding that often our rates are the only way that Auckland Council gets its revenue, and it's not actually true. Our rates account for just about over 40% of Auckland Council revenue, and the rest is made up from the facilities uses, the leisure centres, the public transport, parking, shares, all sorts of different things. So it's quite a massive organisation, and just like every other business that has been locked down, you still have overheads to pay, you still have staff costs, you have all these things, but you've had no revenue. So our revenue is significantly down, and then with the fact that we rely on visitation, we rely on all sorts of things, people feeling safe to be out and about, the kind of return to what was normal before COVID is just going to be a slow trickle of people of returning to normal. So not everyone wants to go back on public transport at this stage. I'm sure it'll be fine later, but people's behaviour has changed as well. So, it's going to be a bit of a long road to recovery. And I think that's what people need to be very mindful of as they look at what the budget or the emergency budget is talking about.
Yeah, in that respect, council's really no different than a business, is it? That it's got this revenue streams, and during COVID-19, just about all businesses have been very affected by businesses first of all closing down and then having to trade out of level 4, level 3, and level 2. I'm fortunate being the chair of the local board that I've been involved in quite a few discussions about the budget and what's required, and it's been a real challenge. I've been impressed actually with the amount of consultation that has been had with all the local board chairs interacting with councillors and Auckland Council staff, and we've all had an opportunity to contribute to it, but it is a massive challenge. It's something that as you found out over the last 6 months or so, Auckland Council had a pretty good financial plan in place. Obviously spending a lot of money on capital stuff, and some would say maybe too much money, but Auckland had really underinvested before, and it's just happened that this problem that nobody foresaw has happened in the middle of that program, because the budget for Auckland Council peaked, with the most capital expenditure, I think, in 2022-23, and then tapered off back to the end of the decade, 2028, and that's sort of been turned upside down a little bit now. So it's really how we fund it, and rates are important. It won't be just rates, but the rates portion is an important part of it, isn't it?
Oh, absolutely. And that's I guess, for those of us who really enjoy or have an expectation to have things like our libraries, our leisure centres, our roads maintained, our water pipes and things, maintained, then rates is our social responsibility. And that's the investment we as a household are putting in to make sure we have a city that operates according to what we would expect. So I think it's hard because the rates had already been forecast to go up by 3.5% this financial year, but obviously a lot of people have lost their work, and Auckland Council offered a rates deferment during lockdown, and quite a lot of people took that opportunity to put a hold on that expense. So that kind of sends a little bit of a message that people are feeling the pinch right now. So it's a really hard time. It's about balancing what people want to see in Auckland and how we recover together, and not putting added strain on households, because it's not easy for a lot of people right now. So ultimately, that's what the budget is asking people to do, is to say, give an indication what sort of what level of pain can you tolerate for us to move forward together.
It'd be very easy, wouldn't it, for people to just push the 2.5% button rather than 3.5% to save a little bit of money. But as you've detailed in your piece, the actual cost per week is quite minimal, isn't it, between 2.5 and 3.5, and 3.5 is still quite a small increase in terms of what some other councils around the country are doing. So if people do choose 3.5 and we go with 3.5, then the impact that Auckland Council are going to have to make, i.e. how hard they're going to have to pull all the levers, are just going to be a little bit less, isn't it? So that's really, I'm hopeful that people understand that we do need to fund our city. It's funded, as you said, not always through rates, but rates are going to play an important part at this stage.
I think as well, like you spoke, Aidan, about the levers, and that was one of the things that we talked about as a local board, like what's important to us, what are non-negotiable. So I'll just clarify the 4 levers that we're talking about, and that's the first one is about our capital expenditure, and how many of those capital investments can we put a hold on. Those that are already committed will continue, but then also you've got to balance that with, we need to create jobs. So some of those big investments need to be progressed so that we keep more people on work, and that helps the economy too. So that's one of the levers. The other is operating expenditure. So that's things like the hours our library operate at. What sort of services do the library offer? Libraries often offer lots of different community events and learning opportunities. Maybe some of those programs get scaled back. Our leisure centres, our zoos, all those things that we have an expectation of in terms of what they do for our community. So that's talking about operating expenses. Then you've got our sort of debt, our debt to revenue ratio, and whether we borrow more money. And a lot of people say, well, just borrow more money. That's what central government do. But it's not that easy, because Auckland Council already is borrowing quite a lot of money, and we're close to our limit. And the more we borrow, the harder it is for us to borrow in the future, because it affects our credit rating. It means that the future generations are the ones who are going to be paying that debt going forwards more, and that's quite an uncomfortable place to be. And then the last one is what do they call it?
Recycling.
Recycling.
Yeah.
And it is recycling in a way, but people
asset recycling, which is another word for selling some assets, isn't it? And it's not something that everybody's overly keen on, but unfortunately at this time there might be some surplus assets, and Auckland Council have quite a few that are obviously going to be part of the picture as well.
Absolutely, and they need to be, because there's $50 billion worth of assets that Auckland Council holds, and not all assets are equal. Some are totally idle, and it will impact very few people if we got rid of them to reinvest in better ways for the greater good. So those are the kind of 4 levers that we've been feeding back on, and they've been tough conversations, hey?
They have been. What I was quite impressed, though, I actually went on and did my own feedback earlier today, and I was very impressed with how easy the process is. Obviously, I didn't make too many comments on there, but I chose all the things that I chose the 3.5%. You'll be pleased to know. But it was very simple. It took me about 2 minutes, I think. So I'd just encourage everybody to go on and have your say. And as I stated earlier, I think if we can try and get that 3.5% over the line, it's just going to make everything not quite as damaging. And it means, what was it, $1 or $2 each household?
So it's like $1.30 versus $1.80 a week per household on average.
Yeah. So, obviously people are challenged. I'm no different. Our business is challenged at the moment, and but I think that's the way forward for Auckland Council. So hopefully hopefully people understand that. In an ideal world, you wouldn't want to increase anything, but that's really the reality, isn't it?
And I think as well, the last point I kind of keep in the back of my mind is that this COVID came out of the blue. No one forecast this year, and certainly not at the beginning of the year. It was just came out of the blue. It's insane. But what happens if something else comes and hits us? We actually need to be resilient, and so we need to kind of get back to a reasonably quick recovery, minimize our debt as much as we can, and be ready for what, the world's a strange place right now. You never know what may come in the future. So that's going to be in my mind too.
As usual, very sound thinking, Toni, very sound thinking.
Thank you, Aidan.
Nice to talk the budget with you. Hopefully in 6 months' time we'll be talking about more positive things.
I hope so. I really hope so. Thanks, Aidan.
Very good. Okay, see you later.